This is an attachment you can put on a four-way flying machine that will move water around. So this is a waterlogged trapdoor in here. Also lets us kind of easily open and close the water stream there. And if we move this big four-way UFO, you see it gets moved. So we can move it this direction a few blocks, give it a few pushes in this direction, push it that way, and the water moves just fine and leaves a cool kind of spiral pattern as it moves. Let me see if I can start it up from the underside so I can get a better look at it. Go. I'll show you how you can set this up and how it works, and I'm hoping someone watching will be able to actually kind of reshape this and solve a problem, which is, at the moment, you can only put one water source on the UFO, so this one over here with 4 water sources doesn't work, and I'll explain why that is in a minute. Before showing how this contraption works, I should take like 30 seconds to explain why pushing a waterlogged block is difficult in the first place. So if you just straight up power a piston, it'll unwaterlog the block. But it turns out if you use an observer, it actually works just fine, except the piston has to be facing into the waterlogged block directly. So if the waterlogged block is attached to something, it doesn't work. Which means if we want to push a waterlogged block in 4 directions, we need to have 4 sticky pistons all facing into it. This mechanism essentially moves in 2 steps. So first, this kind of little flywheel contraption here, the plus sign, we move this, and this observer quasi-powers this piston, and it'll move the waterlogged block just fine. And one of the 4 slime block components surrounding the pistons, and now we need to move these other 3. So the way we do that is we have 2 pistons here, and that moves it just fine. Now in real time when this is attached, this piston is not finished extending and retracting by the time these pistons do their first push. So we have 2 observers on each of these limestone components, so that when we push them, the pistons actually pulse twice. There's also a piston trick which I didn't end up using in the final version of this 4-way water attachment, but was super useful at other points, so I want to show it. This piston actually can't extend if we try to power it because it would have to move both the left component and the right component. But this piston over here could extend, all it has to move is the right component. However, we can actually power both these pistons in the same game tick. Let me just give this observer an update. Because this piston is getting directly powered, but this piston is getting indirectly powered by what's called quasi-connectivity, and as a result, within the same game tick, this piston will always update first, pushing the right component so that it's not counted towards the push limit of the left piston. The same problem pops up right in the heart of this attachment, because these 2 pistons, when they're moved forward, if the left piston tried to extend first, everything is fine. It would push just this left component, but if the right piston tried to extend first, it would have to push this left component, the middle one, and the right one, which I believe adds up to 14 blocks, and so it wouldn't be able to extend. So just by making sure that this block above the left piston is powered first, we can ensure that the update order within the same game tick is correct, and this whole mess can get pushed without any problems. Now it's time to explain the problem that happens when you try to attach multiple water sources to a single UFO. So here's the UFO with just one water source, and watch the shape of the movement, the propagated movement through this machine as it flies. You see it kind of moves forward in like an arrow shape, which means that if you're attaching multiple water sources to a single machine, 2 of them will have the components propagate through them in an arrow shape. So this water source here, the updates go through in an arrow shape. Each one of these components marked by purple would move in the same game ticks. And this water source over here would have its updates come through in an arrow shape, but the components on the left and right for moving water, the left and right water attachments, their updates would come through not in an arrow shape, but in a diagonal line. And, well, here, we can just go ahead and try it out. So you can see that one actually looks like it moved correctly, but the problem happens right here. So this slime component right here is at the full 12 block limit, and normally it would not have anything else attached to it at the moment it's pushed, but because of the diagonal update order, this piston here gets clung on to this component, raising its total to 13 blocks. As a result, this piston can't fire. So, we can just fix it by hand, breaking that piston, moving this forward, putting the piston back. The same problem actually happens over here with, this arm right here. But the arm that actually moves the central components forward doesn't have any problems, so this one looks like it moves forward correctly, but this thing is still getting stuck. That's how you can move water on a 4-way flying machine. Check the description for a world download and for a link to Dylan D's YouTube channel where I learned about these 4-way UFOs in the first place.